What makes a great story? Some people may say it's the acting or the plot, conflict, the pacing. But to me, it's always been, what is the emotional takeaway to the audience? Nothing really makes me feel a deeper emotional connection to a piece of art than when it really hones in on themes of our reality. That is what makes Dune the greatest sci-fi story ever told. It is riddled with symbolism and metaphor, drawing parallels to our modern world in ways that are still applicable almost 80 years, 60 years after this first story came out. And I think that is great storytelling. There are so many things that have conflicts with war and politics and religion, fighting over resources. And the author did this all intentionally. So much of Dune is riddled with lore that is meant to parallel our society. There's a reason it takes place in a desert, in this fight for something that powers spaceships when we get oil in a desert and things like that. And Dune has so much to it in ways that people can't understand from just the film. Honestly, I've never even read the books fully. I just have this crazy obsession with going on like lore deep dives. So I researched all of Dune, all of these things that are really not explained in the movies, and also just to give you a better understanding of the film. Because honestly, I think after learning a lot of this information and some of the things that were omitted from the movie, it made the movie make more sense to me. Welcome back to the Share Your Screen podcast. My name's Nikki.
Hi, I'm Coco.
I'm Nikki Atreides this week.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you. And you're
the worm.
The Empress. The worm. Dude, the worm bucket is crazy.
For anyone listening on podcast, go look at the YouTube because me and Nikki were adamant about getting the AMC buckets.
Oh, it's like that's a piece of pop culture history. I need to know the pitch meeting where somebody like sent that design, because I guarantee you there were 10 people in the room who all thought
but couldn't say it,
but didn't know what to say.
That's exactly
didn't
what
know
happened.
How to tell their boss like, hey King, that resembles a asshole peace and love. Like, you know, like how do you bring that up to your supervisor?
Well, that's why it got greenlit, because no one could bring it up without an HR meeting.
And it's one of those moments where it's like marketing that's so bad it's good, which honestly would be a fun podcast episode. Marketing so bad it's good. Like the Pop-Tarts, like I posted that clip about the Pop-Tarts thing. Oh, so good. Like it's such an interesting concept when things are so bad and lack the self-awareness that the internet just eats it up.
And it has to be accidentally bad.
Yes, it has to be accidentally. Like that's the beauty of it.
Yes.
Even. So yeah, the Dune popcorn bucket is iconic. And I don't know, did you have anything to add? I have like so much. I'm really excited to tell you about this. But like, you know, my obsession with Dune. I have been on the Dune wave before it was cool.
Yeah. No, he has been. You told me about the movie and it got me into it because at first I wasn't that hyped. And then I got into it after talking to Nikki. I really loved the movie. I know like it at the end of this too, we're going to get into like casting lore. But I also want to just add like just something to note. We love your guys' comments and stuff, and I learned so much. And we also just want you guys to appreciate the fact that we are investigative journalists.
Not even a little bit.
This is an opinion podcast, and we really do our best to research. We put a lot of work into this podcast, but it's sometimes we're going to get things wrong, and that's okay. We want to be able to still show up and speak as authentically as we can about the information that we're able to find.
Right. And also like most of this is from we do research and sometimes what different sources say different things too. Like I remember one time on the Olivia Rodrigo episode, there were so many comments saying, you're wrong. She's from LA and she's from Murrieta, which is a place in Southern California, but is not LA. And I'm like, one, it's also, why does that detail matter that much? You know what I mean? But like, it's just things like we're not perfect. We're never claiming to be perfect. Yeah. If you disagree, you're welcome to disagree. We love conversation, but just don't yell at us because again, we're doing our best, girl.
And we're sensitive. No?
We're sensitive.
We're doing our best. We really work hard at this podcast. We're not journalists, and we always encourage you guys to do your own research and be kind when providing new information.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to say.
No, I love it. Thank you for getting that out early. So starting like with the lore of Dune. Dune is based off a book series. The first series, Dune, was written by Frank Herbert in 1965. And it's funny that people say Dune kind of copies a lot from Star Wars, but actually Dune was before Star Wars. The first Star Wars movie came out in 1977.
Is Star Wars based on a book or no?
I think it is based on a book, but there's like weird stuff. Like they were written around the same time,
Okay.
and George Lucas and the author I was trying to read about this, but it was very
Yeah.
confusing. I couldn't get a clear
Again, yeah,
answer.
yeah.
But like when you think about how Star Wars has a lot of stuff to do with space politics, this concept of like Jedi being a religion and stuff like that is pulled from Dune. Like Dune was really one of the first great sci-fi stories to integrate this concept of like real, what would politics, like a political system, look like in this hypothetical universe? How does religion evolve as technology evolves? How does commerce and like things like that I'm just so fascinated by. And I think again, when you're creating a very fantastical story, like the entire nature of sci-fi, great fantasy has to be based in some sort of reality in order to feel an attachment to it, I think. And even like in stories like Game of Thrones, I feel like you grow a lot of attachment to like the family dynamics and the characters, and like this constant like need for revenge because they're all fighting each other and stuff like that. And I think stories that really lean into this concept of fantasy and fiction that are done well always have this like humanity at the center of it. And that's what I love about Dune. So going into like just the concept of Dune has actually, this is the fourth attempt at an adaptation. There was one in the 70s, one in the 80s, one in the 2000s, and now this is the fourth attempt. And previously it had been deemed as unfilmable because the books are very, very long. And also a very big theme of Dune is it's very introspective. So like the way that the books are written is not in terms of like conversation, but it will be like the thoughts people had after. So instead of it being like Nicky talking to Coco, it would be like Nicky thinking to himself about the conversation he had with Coco at dinner. So you have to like read it in terms of these like context clues and stuff like that, which has, people have said, made it extremely hard to adapt because in a film setting, you need to show that. You can't just show someone laying in bed, like, like
a thought bubble above their
like
head.
a thought bubble. So that was one of the reasons it was so difficult. And they have tried in multiple formats. It's been adapted in both movies and TV shows, which is something I remember even we talked about feeling like at some points it felt a little rushed or just like too much going on at once. And I didn't know that they had actually attempted to make it a TV show before, but even that was like, I guess too difficult. Yeah, too difficult to do. So going into the lore of Dune, Dune has three great political powers, and this is something that is not well explained. It's the Emperor, who we know. It's the six great houses, including like the Atreides and the Harkonnens, was like the protagonists and antagonists, and also the Spacing Guild, which is not explained. So the Spacing Guild is essentially people who can navigate and fly spaceships. That is their entire purpose. They are like kind of the equivalent of like United Airlines and also Amazon of the Dune universe. So because of that, there's a lot of power in that, right? Like they're the only people who can navigate space travel. And the only way they can do that is by taking the spice. Spice is what is this big resource on Dune. And spice is a direct symbolism for both oil in our real world and drugs. So it's supposed to be both at once. So they have to take it in order to travel. So it gives them this like heightened awareness, heightened reflexes. That's why the people of Dune are great fighters, because they are constantly taking this like drug essentially. So because of that, to a lot of very important people in the Dune universe take the spice because it makes them smarter. It makes them live longer. It makes them have heightened awareness. So it is a very big plot point too in the books that people like the Emperor and the Reverend Mother are addicted to spice. Like they take it constantly, which is why there is so much war over this planet, because if they stop taking it, they die. Wow. So that's like something that's just not in the Dune movies at all, is that like that's a very big important piece of like why they care. It's not just like, oh, they can find another resource to power the spaceships. No, like the ruler and like the political figures of this universe are addicted to this substance. So another thing that's not explained in the Dune universe is that there are no computers. Did you notice that there were no computers in Dune? There are no phones. Nobody has a smartphone. Nobody has a laptop.
Is it because it was written before the invention of computers?
No, they are banned. So it's like part of the Dune lore that years and years ago, there's like an AI takeover which is crazy. What are the odds that in 1965, this guy wrote a book about the taking over of AI? And now that this movie is released in 2024, like when I
He's
tell
a
you,
prophet.
there are weird parallels
This is
between
scary.
what happens in Dune and what happens in our real universe. That's why it's the best sci-fi story of all
I'm
time.
clutching my worm.
No, it's so good. So in this hypothetical, what happens is essentially because they're very advanced scientifically, right? They have spaceships,
Yeah.
they have suits to survive in the desert, they have ways to harness water in ways that we don't even have, but there's no computers. And that's because they, in the past, like really invested into computers and they took over. So there was this war against man versus machine. And since then, the idea of making a computer is banned.
Whoa.
So that's why none of the spaceships, like if you look in the spaceships, they're driving them. They don't have any autopilot. They don't have anything. Everything is man-powered, which is a really interesting thing that, again, they just don't bring up in the Dune movies at all, but I think is really important too to understand like why they care so much about this resource, why this one planet is like so important to this entire global, galaxy-wide power struggle, essentially, because you are both it's like if one person controlled all of the oil and all of the drugs in our society. Like
and
imagine
if you didn't take the drugs, you died. So it's not even just like not for pleasure.
Exactly. So like imagine the amount of political power that would be there.
Wow.
So with that too, it is why they created, again, the Spacing Guild came to power. It was because they were the only people who could figure out how to navigate spaceships and stuff without a computer, without a calculator, without any of that. And then the last main political power is the Bene Gesserit. And this is essentially a religious cult, kind of.
Okay.
And they are made of entirely women. And this is not based on any specific religion per se. It pulls in a lot of things from Catholicism, a lot of things from Buddhism, but is meant to symbolize the concept of religion.
Okay.
So they have special powers, essentially, where they can control every muscle, every nerve, and like the biochemistry in their bodies. So that's why in the movie she can hear the voice of her baby.
Okay, I was trying to
That's
figure that
also
out.
something that they can do is they can control the gender of their baby. So the Bene Gesserit's entire goal as like this religious sect is to create what they call the Kwisatz Haderach. And this is the identity of the chosen one, which is essentially what Paul Atreides is, what Timothée Chalamet is. And what the Kwisatz Haderach is it means the male who can truly be one of us. So the power of the Bene Gesserit is like they have this almost like psychic kind of, like they can communicate telepathy. They have the power of the voice that we'll talk about. And also they have the power to see the past of the Reverend Mother can, when she takes the liquid, gains the ability to see the memories and history of every single past Reverend Mother. So they're also kind of really important as like they are the history of Dune. They are the storytellers.
Wow.
So because of that, they are seen as like they're consultants. So like every king has a Bene Gesserit or like a specific Reverend Mother, and that's why they're on all these planets. So their entire goal is essentially to manipulate these bloodlines. It's like a breeding program. So they try to cross bloodlines of the great houses, try to find people either that they think are special or will come into political power and make them have a kid with a Bene Gesserit to then continue to propagate like this religion into greater pieces of political power. So Paul really resents the idea that he is like a part of a breeding program. Like he finds out and it really bothers him. And this is not something that's like talked about as much in the movie, but I really like how they kind of flip this concept of like the magical mentor. So like every story in fantasy, there's some sort of magical mentor. It's like Obi-Wan in Star Wars. It's like Gandalf in Harry Potter. It's like in Game of Thrones, the Third Eye Raven. You know what I mean? There's this concept of like somebody who's kind of magical and knows more about the world and has to like teach that to a protagonist. And what I like about Dune is it flips the opposite. It's like the magical mentor teaches them a lot, but he hates them for it, which is interesting. So going on with the Bene Gesserit, they are like, they do these things called missionaries. Literally, they call them the Missionarias Protectiva. And the point of it is they go and spread propaganda to different planets of false religions where the Bene Gesserit are always involved. So like on the planet of Arrakis, it's that the son of a Bene Gesserit will inherit this great power and be your savior. Why do they do that? So that every single time one of their people goes there, they're treated like a queen. They're a religious. They have a big influence over the political leaders and stuff like that. And that is why in the beginning, Paul hates it. He rejects this idea of being the chosen one because he thinks it's a lie. And honestly, it starts as a lie.
And in the movie, he says they went from friends to followers.
I loved that quote of the movie so much too. That was like one of the things I wanted to bring up later too, of like, I really wish they had honed in on that more, where he starts as like a comrade and through this process, like becomes a god essentially to these people, regardless of whether it's true or not, they view him that way. And I feel like that would have been such like an interesting character dynamic to explore. Like, how does somebody who was once your friend now like reveres you? And I also think it would have placed a lot more weight into like Chani's character because she was the only person who ever viewed him as a human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
as
even when he ascended to this power, she was the only one who like challenged him mentally, would reject his visions and stuff like that even. And I felt like that was like such an important part of like why they are meant to be together, is because she's the only one who can see past his like duty to understand the man. Yeah. And I thought that would have been so interesting. Like just even conversations about that would have been cool. Last, I just want to talk about, I think like the goals. Also, like there's just something that I really like, this quote in Dune that I love. It was in the books. It's like, the mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. And I thought that was so good. Like just this idea of like, they don't really know what they're doing, but they're navigating through it. And this is kind of also like a big trope of like, again, going back to the Bene Gesserit of like, they intentionally don't really have a specific alliance. They have a goal. And Dune really hones in on this theme of like, what are you willing to give up in sake of a greater purpose? So for Paul, that's his humanity, right? He has to stop acting like a person and start acting like a god. For someone like Chani, she has to give up her love. She has to give up her innocence. She has to essentially give her man away to this empress now. For his mother, that's like her entire family and lineage. She has to ascend as this like Reverend Mother.
Which the actress that played the mom did such a good job, because like in the first movie and in the beginning, and I'm not going to give away a spoiler, you just see a shift in her mannerisms, in her intentions. It was like night and day.
And Dune really hones in like on like, that's like a very common theme of like, what are you willing to give up in sake of a greater goal? And like mild spoiler at the end of the movie, when Paul's mom finally comes in contact again with the big Reverend Mother, who's like the consultant of the Emperor, she through telepathy communicates like, you chose the wrong side. And Paul's mom says that, and the big Reverend Mother is like, you should know but better than anyone, there are no sides. Congratulations, Reverend Mother. So essentially telling her like, what I had to give up was my entire life, but what I gave up in search of like this, creating this Kwisatz Haderach is worth it to me. Like, you are the Reverend Mother now. You are the leader now. I'm happy to give up my life.
She gave up victory.
Yes, she gave up victory. She gave up power. And I think that is like so interesting too. And then last, something that I love that is like this power of the voice that the Bene Gesserit have, is this like ability, essentially they say something and it happens, right? So like, sit down and people will sit.
It's like silence.
And it was based off of like, I think that like the author did an interview and they're like, why is there a power to manipulate people with words? And he's like, because that power exists in our society today. Like people manipulate each other with words all the time, especially in politics, right? So he's like, the idea, it's specifically in politics and religion. So he's like, the idea of making it a magical power to force people to do things with words was again symbolism to how we manipulate each other in real life even and stuff like, and like I just love writing like that. It's so riddled with like everything has meaning, even though you think it's like some you know, oh, it's just like a superpower or sci-fi. It's like, no, he's really like pulling these things from like experiences of our life. And that's what I think just like makes the cinematic universe so deep. And I think that's the end of my lore dump, honestly. Like I just really wanted to like, because I feel like I don't know, like do you feel now like some of the, like some parts of the movie make a bit more sense?
For sure. Now that you like, and even watching it, like you can still enjoy it, but maybe it's like us, like me and you love over analyzing things. And like I always say, I love movies that are based on a true story, but this is like maybe not based on a true story, but based on true dynamics. And they're just in a different like characteristic.
Yeah. Or even just like, even the fact that like it takes place in a desert environment. And that these desert people are rebelling, but seen as savages by the rest of the world, and it's like, well, to us we see that they're fighting for their lands, they're fighting, and that's like, that's imperialism, that's colonization, that's like such a prominent thing of our time. And I just think like stuff like that, like even just including elements of that is so important.
Or even like what we were saying last night at dinner after the movie, where like I felt like the worms in the movie, like it's panning to camera, I felt like the worms were supposed to represent Mother Nature, and like some people, like the some of them were able to accept Mother Nature and learn about it and like submit to the power and like wield it as a result, and then some of them underestimated Mother Nature and like denied its existence, and then that was their demise. Like I think the worm really represented like people leaning into it.
No, I think you're so right. Even the fact of like how people know that they're defying Mother Nature but risk their life to gain economic power. So it's like people like they literally are like what blimp in these like minefields and have to pick them up again every time a worm comes, and you see how often people die from this. And I think that's shown to see like a lot of the stuff that goes on in the Middle East and stuff like that of like oil rigging and mining, and how corporations essentially force people to risk their lives for economic profit.
And like I think something that makes me think of it. One of my favorite things about the movie, you kind of see it in the first movie, way more in the second movie. What really got me was, and when I was doing some research, one of the director, Denis Villeneuve said that what drew him to the books as a teenager was how realistic the technology felt. Like it was clearly like this movie feels like an interpretation of where our technology might lead us. And yet it felt so tangible. Like the moment where there was those things in the sand, and it's like, it looked like these little sticks in the sand that were just like, and then I'm like, what is that? And then out of nowhere, all of the soldiers appear, and it was the way they could breathe while hiding in the sand. Like things like that. I'm like, it's so like crazy.
It's like an elevated snorkel.
An elevated snorkel for sand. And I think for me, that was what really got me, was these ideas of like where technology might lead us and what it might look like.
Totally. Or I think it's cool too how you see like technology. God, there's a great quote and I'm going to mess it up. It's like innovation is a symptom of necessity. And that like this desert civilization is so advanced in the way that they survive and in this warfare that even these people with like resources that are coming to this planet to try and colonize it cannot keep up because these people are so adapted to this environment specifically.
It was, and even like the things where when someone dies or is dying, they'll like put this thing on them and take out their moisture. So then they can like have those moisture packs while they move further in the desert. Or the sand walking, because like in the movie, if you walk like normally, it attracts the sandworms. Like they listen to those patterns and repetitions. And so like there's a scene where Zendaya's teaching Timothy how to sand walk, and it's like,
like they have to like you move.
You can't walk in a pattern.
Exactly, but it does. It makes it feel so alive. Exactly what you're describing. And something else that they mention in the books and stuff is like the reason the people of Dune are like obsessed with water. Like water is almost like a religious thing to them because it's so rare on their planet. So that's also, you'll notice like whenever somebody cries, they like go like this and like suck it.
Oh,
and
to
that's
bring it
because
back.
it's like, I won't waste my water on this.
Yeah.
Or like they talk a lot about wasting water and stuff, which I thought was
Yeah.
cool. Or that there's one time a character throws up and they yell at her for it. And that's because she's wasting her water.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out why they yelled at her.
Yep,
Is that why?
Yep.
Okay. Wow. It was such I'm going to watch them back again because I'm just so into it. And if you're down, I have a few facts about casting.
Dude, I would love to. I just had like a bunch of lore.
It was so good.
I would love to hear like all the research you
Okay.
did.
So I found online, it was this website called Empire Online, and they had an exclusive interview for the first Dune movie. And it was like they were talking to the director, they were talking to everyone. It was so cool. On set, they went to where they were on set in Budapest for the first movie. Did you know that Timothée Chalamet didn't audition for the part of Dune?
Whoa.
What happened is the director, Denis Villeneuve, when he found out that he got greenlit to do this movie with Warner Brothers, he knew that Timothée Chalamet was going to play Paul.
Interesting.
Yes, he didn't even hold auditions for the part.
Wow.
And Timothy, when he got word that the movie was being made, he didn't know about this part yet. He turned on Google alerts for the production of the movie so he could get notified about news to see if like auditions or anything were coming up. And when he found out that the director was considering him, he got on a flight and flew to Cannes, France, where the director was for a film festival, to like accept the part in person.
Wow.
Like just flew there to say that.
That's crazy. I do remember in interviews, Timothy had said that he had read the books prior. So he was like
Wow.
familiar with the story and really wanted to be the character, which is cool.
It's so cool. And the reason that the director chose Timothy, which I was like, oh, I wonder why. Well, and first off, before I say, one, I want someone to believe in me as much as Warner Brothers casting believes in Timothée Chalamet. And he does it so good every time, but he's like a Warner Brothers darling.
Yeah.
Willy Wonka, it's just, yeah. And so the reason he chose Timothée Chalamet, he told Empire Online, was because he has this like juxtaposition of an old soul and also like insane charisma. And that was kind of Paul's character of this like old soul. Like he was like the psychic and like had the knowledge that was coming to him through visions and understood society, and yet was also kind of like a young energy and like curious about the world and about making friends and meeting people. And I think Timothy really perfectly captured that.
No, he does really well. And I think in the books at the beginning, Paul's supposed to be like 15. Like he's a lot younger, and Timothy looks young.
Looks young, yeah.
But I don't know. There's like a lot of time skips and stuff, even in the movies. Like you can tell that they like move along. So I'm not sure how old he's supposed to be in the movies and stuff. But I know at the very, very beginning, he's like a child.
Wow. And another thing too, I guess there's a couple, is like the composer Hans Zimmer. He is such a fan of the Dune books that he turned down the opportunity to work on Tenet with his longtime collaborator Christopher Nolan to work on the Dune movie instead.
Wow.
And it was the first time since the movie The Prestige in 2006 that Hans Zimmer had not done the score for a Christopher Nolan film. The two of them famously have done Interstellar, Inception, Dark Knight.
Yep.
Hans Zimmer changed the way people score music for movies.
Literally.
And he said on the podcast, The Fourth Wall, that he was a big fan of the books and Nolan understood, like, there's no bad blood. And that he purposely didn't watch the original Dune movie that came out in the 80s because he wanted to go in with just the book in mind and like bring a fresh perspective to the sound of the movie, which to me, where he really captured it was the scene where Austin Butler is coming out to fight during his like birthday battle. And
that was like my favorite scene of the movie.
I was like, whoa.
And he's so good. It reminds me of Dark Knight Rises when Bane is doing it. When they are climbing the thing, they're like, oh.
Yes. Like a chanting. Like, and also we were saying this last night, you know who deserves an Oscar? the person who did Austin Butler's wig cap for the movie.
Oh yeah.
Transformed.
Smooth head.
Smooth. Our
Smooth
friend was
head.
like, I didn't know it was him for like half the movie. Like,
No, I don't know
he
what
looks
it is
different.
about his face. Like, he looked good as an like he was like I'm like, I feel like you were born to be like this. Like
Yeah.
something about like the like eyebrow line and like the cheekbone and the lips. Like he looked so much like an
Yeah.
alien. It was so good.
And on that note, I'm going to start an incorrect rumor right now.
Okay.
Austin Butler is a distant, like sibling of the Skarsgård family.
What was the Skarsgård family?
The guy who played it, the clown,
Oh, that guy.
and the brothers,
That
and
guy.
also the dad,
He's
the
kinda hot.
Skarsgård dad was in the Dune movie. He's the one who played like the evil chubby one in the
Baron.
bathtub. That was the Skarsgård, like the
I didn't
patriarchy.
know that.
The Austin Butler nepo baby of the Skarsgård dad. We unlocked it here.
He's part of the breeding program.
We
The
need
Bene
that-
Gesserit. They created Austin
Dude.
Butler and they piped him into that Disney Channel.
You heard it here. We need that music. Do, do, do. And then, okay, so a couple things. I'll go through them quickly. So another thing is Chalamet said that in other movies, he was afraid to look at storyboards because it might limit him or his imagination. Like if he knew that like in Call Me By Your Name, they're really zoomed in on his face, he might not move his body the way the character would move. He'd be too focused on the face. And so he said that with Dune, even though he looked at the storyboard, it actually still gave him his, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that it gave his character this like free reign because in no other situation has he been chased by a sandworm the size of the Empire State Building. So like
Yeah.
he couldn't really even
Yeah.
imagine what that would be like. So when he was filming, he was experiencing it for the first time with the audience. Like, oh my God, like the vastness of this
Right.
feeling. That was really cool. Another thing, this is so Jason Momoa coded, but when he found out that he got the character he played in the first movie, that this is so in his character, like this is just so him. He was on a ski lift and had just made it to the top of a mountain
Okay.
to snowboard.
Okay.
And he gets the alert on his phone that he is being offered the role. And he said that he has never snowboarded faster in his life, down a hill, ran to his hotel room, got on a Skype call to accept the offer.
Wow.
And he said that as an actor, getting a part like this is like winning the lottery. Because it's just like
Interesting.
this movie. And also, and then that just leads me to something else Jason Momoa said was that on one of the first days on set when they were in Budapest for the first movie, they actually had trouble filming that scene because all of the actors were tripping out at each other because all of them, like, you guys, this is an all-star cast. He said that they were all like freaked out at each other because they had never been on a set where everyone was so starstruck. They almost
Yeah.
were like just frozen.
No,
like,
the Dune cast is like one of the best casts we've ever seen
Yes.
in a movie of our century. It's
Yeah.
like we'll go down in history. Also, I think it's so smart how they paired like it's a very old story, so it's like nostalgia for like our parents.
Yeah.
but really young, like very popular Gen Z talent.
Yes.
Florence Pugh, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya. Like those are three Austin Butler actors I think of when I think of like Gen Z idols.
yes.
And I think that they're like, okay, well, we can have the cast draw in the new audience, and
Modern.
the story will draw in the older audience.
You're spot on because in the article,
No way.
Like, you're psychic. You're psychic. In the article, Dennis Villanueva said that he knew that the story was very dense and would deter some people, especially if they hadn't read the books. And so he said that he had to find cast members that a younger audience would care about and care about their characters in a storyline. Like you're so in love with Zendaya that you're going to watch her in every story that she's in. And it worked.
It
'cause
absolutely
I was
worked.
there.
And they keep adding them. They have this like revolving door structure. So now like, Austin Butler out, but like, or in the first movie, Jason Momoa now out. Then in Austin Butler. Then after Austin Butler, Anya Taylor-Joy. I
which
get it mixed up.
she was in it for like 3 seconds, but I think she's going to be in the if there's a third movie, she has to be a big character in it.
I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be his sister.
Yes.
But also that does make me think too, we're talking about this, like there has to be a significant time skip.
Yeah.
Because she is in the womb right now.
Yeah, she's in the womb.
She was an adult in the vision.
Yeah.
Which is also something that I love about this, which I first talked about earlier, is like, so like one of the power of like the Kwisatz Haderach is like he can see the future.
Okay.
Right. But he can specifically, one, I talked about how the Bene Gesserit can only see like the past visions of women. He can see men and women, which is a very important thing. So like there's that. And then also it is that I love that he has this power to see the future, but the futures aren't always real. I think that makes it such an interesting
Which way is it gonna
viewer
go?
experience, because one, it's like boring. If he knows what's gonna happen and knows it's gonna work, it's not fun. But I
Yeah.
do like the idea of him like taking an act because he sees this vision, but he misinterpreted the vision.
Yeah.
Or the vision never came to life. Like in the first movie, I remember he has this vision of him becoming best friends with this character named Jamis. But at the end of the movie, he kills Jamis. They never become friends. So it's like really interesting how you as a viewer are like, okay, is this an Easter egg for the next movie? Or is this like something I have to predict around? I don't know. I just think it makes it really fun.
Whoa. Yes. That would make sense why they tried to like kind of rush the storyline at the end of the first movie about Jonas dying and like them really showing how beloved he was, because maybe they couldn't show like that friendship in like 2 minutes of a story time or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, you guys, please don't hate me. I just looked up the pronunciation of the name and it's Villeneuve, not Villeneuve.
Villeneuve for what?
The director. I'm sorry, you guys. Please. Okay, I'm so sorry.
We're not
Anyways, or
perfect.
Villeneuve. Anyways, I really hope they do a third movie.
Oh, they're going to for sure.
You think so?
Yeah, this is becoming a huge franchise. This is, I think, one, thank God we finally have new source material, dude. We have had so many
It's been
remakes.
a desert. No pun intended.
It has been and who would have thought the cure for a desert was a desert?
I know.
But we've had every prequel, every remake ever. And the reason Dune is so popular is it's like a new story to most of these people.
Yeah.
And I do not understand why these production companies do not understand that we want to see something new. Like, I think that this concept of like safety has killed creativity.
Yes.
Like, we don't need to have the biggest movie. It just needs to make X more than we spent. But that has made it so that there is this eternal diminished returns. Like, look at the MCU. MCU is the perfect example. Like, it
Yeah.
hit its peak and it's never gotten close to what it
Yeah.
was since Infinity War. And
Yeah.
it never will. Because
Never
they
will.
keep doing the same thing over and over again, and people
Yeah.
want something new.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know. I just love Dune. I feel like it's doing it for me.
It's Dune is doing it. And also like in what I really liked about this movie, and they talked about it in that Empire interview, which we can link in the show notes. I'll send it to you. But another thing is like, and it makes me contrast with what you're saying about Marvel, and they wanted to not use green screens. They used a few, and even in post editing, they really only edited in like the worm and like the spaceships during like fight scenes
Yeah.
and stuff. But that they filmed in these desert locations because they wanted to capture like the vastness and like this, like I think what the Dune movie felt different from other like superhero-y franchise sci-fi movies was like it felt tangible and real. It wasn't
Yeah.
like in a green room and then they just like added in post editing like, you know, a
Yeah,
animated
it
spaceship.
makes it feel very alive. And I
Yeah.
also think it's really important to show how much the environment shapes a person.
Yeah.
And who they turn out to be. You know, they even talk about that in the movie, how when like the Empress is talking about this like southern tribe, and they were talking about like whether or not they thought they were strong, or whether they were going to be very faithful to the Bene Gesserit. And she's like, in order to survive, the only way you can survive in an environment like that is if you have faith. And I thought that was such an interesting line.
There were so many good
of
quotes.
like, yeah, of like the way if you're, you know, living in a desert, you have to have a pretty ironclad will.
Yeah.
And that's what makes these people survivalists. It's what makes them great fighters. It's what makes them so dedicated to this cause, because this environment has like shaped who they are as a civilization.
And like faith is the only tangible like connection and culture that you can't like take from someone physically. Like you can take their home, you can take their car, you can take their spice,
Yeah.
but like faith is the one thing that you can't go in and like pull from that.
I would argue that when you try, it makes faith go even stronger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good. And like I guess also, unless there's any few more
No,
things
hit
about
me
Dune,
with
I'll
it.
just so maybe a little foreshadow for the potential episode next week. We got a really great comment on our YouTube video last week that wants us to talk about the perfume industry for celebrities.
Interesting.
Because it's like, I don't know if you saw, but Kylie Jenner just announced she's coming out with a fragrance called Cosmic today.
I feel like it's because she's struggling.
You think so, with like makeup, or?
I think it's because Kylie Cosmetics is struggling. And that's why she started Kai.
Okay.
And that's why she's starting this.
And can I be honest? I'm a big, ask anyone, I'm a huge Kylie Jenner fan. I just love her. I don't know what it is, but I ordered Kai when the first drop came out.
Yeah.
It was the worst quality thing I've ever gotten.
It's not Skims.
I had to send it back.
It's not Skims. And I feel like what she's missing is like Skims has like a very clear vision and purpose.
Yeah.
At least I think like Kim Kardashian was very popular for having that crazy silhouette. You think of like the break the internet shoot, you know, when she's like popping the champagne bottle onto her butt. So she makes shapewear.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense to me. And at the beginning, Kylie blew up for lips. And she started a lip line and it did so well. And then she stopped making a lot of her branding and identity about her lips and tried to do all these other things. And then everything started to suffer because of it.
I think that she should have gotten into like a mommy care line shortly after
She
Kylie
tried
Cosmetics.
and it didn't work.
I remember they did like a shoot for it and then like no products ever
I think
came
the
out.
problem with doing things like that, like an industry around children or babies when you're a parent, is like it works for 5 years, but then what happens after your toddler? What happens if they stop needing
That's
diapers?
so true.
Are you still going to sell diapers? Like it's weird, you know what I mean?
That's such a good point. So we'll get into that next week, and a little like I'll just leave you guys with something to chew on. Is that when I was doing research for it, according to the Zoe report, a cloud perfume by Ariana Grande is sold every 11 seconds.
That's crazy.
My little sister is one of every 3 of them. Like my little sister has so many perfumes, and like she's obsessed with cloud. Like she has one in her car. She has one in her backpack. Like she just has to smell like cloud all the time.
Interesting. I mean, I do think it was so smart. No one was really doing celebrity perfume at that scale.
Yes.
Until Ariana did it. At least not to my knowledge. Also keep in mind, I'm not the target audience. So there could be somebody I'm not thinking of. But like, I don't know. I never heard about like celebrity makeup. We've been done new. Celebrity skincare.
I'm over it.
We've been done new.
I called the hair care thing like
You
over
did.
a year ago.
You did?
I was like
Just
the
the wrong
pattern.
person?
Yes. I was like the pattern JVN, boom. And then I was like, but more celebrities are going to get into hair care because skin and makeup is oversaturated. Oh my God. Wait, also I'm starting another untrue rumor.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
I'm
We
listening.
need like a news desk.
I would love a news desk.
I think Beyonce saw my Hollywood hair theory video.
Interesting.
Yeah, because she did an interview about her hair care line, and she said that the first thing that she thinks of when coming up with a new album, a new visual, a new concert, what the hair's gonna look like, and she builds everything around that.
Interesting.
Bro.
Dua Lipa does it too. Dua Lipa does it too.
And she
does it for every
video.
album.
She time traveled, watched my video, went back into like the early 2000s and built her entire brand around the video that I would film in 2023.
Exactly.
You heard it
And
here
everybody
first.
knows that.
Dude. Okay, that was all for me.
I think so too.
This is great.
Thanks for joining, guys. Next week, excited to talk about Ariana Grande. Also, possibly Spotify Part 2.
Yeah, they reached out to us because you guys really love the episode. They love the episode. We love the episode. It was a win-win-win.
Win-win-win. We'll
I actually
see.
got and a text while we're here on the pod. I got a text from someone, I'll tell you after, that works in the industry that said they listened to the episode and they were obsessed.
Period. I'm excited to hear.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Bye.